Hi everybody, I just wanted to cover some odds and ends as an addendum to today's report, written report rather. The first is that I showed a chart of FireEye which had undercut this prior low and rallied above it. That triggered an undercut and rally move. But for some reason the E-signal chart wasn't showing this day today. I don't know why, but I noticed it's been doing that from time to time. It's like it has incomplete data and it doesn't fill out the chart until a couple 3 hours after the close. So what you see here actually is a reversal on higher volume, and that actually looks like a shortable move. So, this is an undercut and rally. I think that's a 1620 low here. No, I'm sorry, 1670 something low. Let me check that real quick. That is 1678 low. But you reversed here, so that looks bearish to me, like it wants to head lower. So I'd almost consider this one a short, really, using the 20-day as a stop. If you saw a little blip up into the 20-day, 10-day moving average confluence, that's the green line and the magenta line, and that might become shortable right there. So, that's something to think about. I notice there are a lot of patterns that look like they're shortable, and there are some that maybe look viable. Some interesting things that I'm noticing is that despite the fact that Congress is slapping down the ZTE settlement, that's the Chinese telecom firm that had a ban put on it by the Commerce Department. These stocks like Acacia, which I've heard gets 25% of its business from ZTE, it's just hanging tight along the 20-day and the 10-day. I mean, why isn't it just busting? So I wonder if that's telling you something. So this could become actually still be viable here. The only problem is you're subject to some news. Another company that is a supplier is Finisar, and it's doing the same thing. You notice you had a pocket pivot here. That would have been last Friday, and you're holding tight along the 10-day line with volume picking up today, but that looks constructive, not destructive, So another note is that after hours, Goldman Sachs upgraded light momentum to a buy. The stock's been floundering. Kind of disappointing, but that happens. That's why you have stops. And most recently it busted the 200-day line here, and it's trying to rally into it today, and it stalls out. So it's up after hours a couple of percent. We'll see if that triggers any sort of moving average undercut and rally back up through the 200-day line. But when Goldman puts a buy on something, that can often be good for at least a few points. So you want to keep an eye on that one in the morning. So other things that I've been noticing, acting 3D Systems, the 3D printing company, that was a buy long here. You had an undercut and rally. You had a voodoo draw up along the 20-day line. I talked about it in one of my webinars back then. And not webinars, rather video reports, and it's gone higher. And you had another pocket pivot today off the 10-day line, but it's extended. But that's an example of one that's acting pretty well. And Prox is hanging out along the 10-day line, although I consider that extended. It was last viable down in here when it was quiet, and I talked about it down there as a turnaround situation. It's had a nice move since then, about 20%. And kind of wedging slightly, I guess, along the 10-day line, but doesn't look really bad. There are some other retailers like Nike's been acting well. I think Under Armour's been acting well, and these have all done pretty well recently. So something to keep an eye on. Other things that are showing up on my radar, Shutterfly, which is hanging along the 20-day line. Volume's been drying up. So I don't know, that doesn't really get moving. You would think that you'd see something, but it doesn't really go down or up, depending on whatever the market's doing. It seems to ignore it. Spot, I noticed, had a pocket pivot today. Now, you've got all of these hot little IPOs that have just gone nuts. I talked about that briefly in today's report. But if you look at some of these things, these are nuts, and they'll come down very hard, and so you can't really take these for granted. Like these are going to be some great long-term holdings. If you have something that you bought down in here, and I talked about this one down here, I also talked about IQ and Spot at the same time back in here when they were still in these bases. But if you own these and you've experienced this move, just be apprised that things can come down very hard. You're seeing Dropbox do that. I noticed also Carbon Black had a great move, but look at how it just gets pummeled off of the peak and comes down about 20% and nothing flat. So you got to be careful with these. Don't get too carried away. When they get really extended, I'd be taking profits on them. So other ones that look interesting is this DocuSign, which found support today, but that's way up there. And Huya, which actually has very decent earnings, is still also way up there. I mean, look at these patterns. And these are crazy, you know, very crazy speculative stuff, and it makes me wonder whether this is indicating that maybe the market's ready for a deeper pullback from here, because you really haven't had much of a pullback since you launched from here back through the 50-day line on the NASDAQ. So, you know, that's early May lows, and you really haven't had much of a pullback. You've kind of set up in here and went higher. Now you're up in here, and then today, as I pointed out in today's report, you had a little stalling and churning up around the peak as volume picked up just slightly. I think it was 6% above average. So if things are a little frothy and maybe everything's a little too obvious, everybody's feeling too good right now, so a lot of times that can trigger a pullback. So you know, watch out for that. Anyways, PS is another one. Actually had a friend tweet me. His wife actually tweeted me that she had bought the stock and she owned it. And that was on Monday, and that was right, you know, near the highs. And people will get excited about stuff like that, but I thought that was interesting because I'm just wondering if that tells you that there's a peak in this stock. They don't have any earnings. Most of these don't have any earnings. I think Huya does. Dropbox does. And I think one other, I'm trying to remember which one that is. So, you know, these things, they'll come down so fast, it'll make your head spin. And so people get excited about these and they think they're on to something big. But it's you can see it's just a big IPO sort of group move. And you have to wonder what that is telling you, if anything, about the general market. So we'll see. In the meantime, you know, that makes my antenna sort of perk up a little bit. And I'm wondering if maybe you'll see some kind of a deeper pullback in the market, as I was saying. Pivotal Software, same thing. Nice move, but it looks like it wants to come in. It gaps up. That's not a Bible gap up, I guess. Well, you could look at it that way, and it would have worked. But now it's just chopping around, so we'll see what happens there. This other one, Zscaler. I don't know if some of these techs are sensitive to the whole China, U.S., China trade tiff thing, whatever you want to call it. But this one's trying to hang in there along the 10-day line, not really happening. Gets a big shakeout yesterday on some decent volume, but you had a Bible gap up here coming out of the base. I think maybe it pulls into the 20-day. That might be a spot to be looking at it. So it's an interesting story. But again, this is one of those hot IPOs that could easily turn into an ice cold IPO. Here you have this Zuora, which has gone nuts, but now it comes in, you know, not quite 20% in just a couple of days, but that thing's starting to come in hard. And I wouldn't assume that these moves, you know, are going to continue like this. You know, I know people, they get involved in something like this and they get really excited, especially if they're relatively new investors, and that's when they end up swallowing the big pill, so to speak. Anyways, some other things that were going on today. This name Box is kind of interesting. I actually saw this. I don't know if I talked about this over the weekend, but it's hanging in here, and you had not quite a pocket pivot, but you did get it on Monday and moved up higher. Got some support 10-day line yesterday. So, you know, whenever you see these hot little goodies, you always got to be watching for these pullbacks, and they're generally going to occur when the market comes in. And you step in and you buy them. And as today's report shows, there were a lot of those happening yesterday. Whether these things continue higher remains to be seen. And I saw a lot of these moves, like, for example, with Baba. You know, you push up into the 10-day line and you stall. And you'll see a number of these. I know Sale was the same thing. And I talk about that in the report. Whoops, let me get this pen out of the way. Here we go. And you can see, oh, that's not showing either. There's the chart that I show in the report today shows a little stalling up in here. Momo did the same thing. So you want to be careful with those. But some other names, you know, there's Carter's, which is a retailer, had a pocket pivot today, and I guess it's kind of a breakout, but I wouldn't be chasing this. But that looks interesting. I believe that's a retailer. I could be wrong. Mellanox is another one, had a nice move today. But that's extended, and it stalled a little bit. So I'm just pulling things out of my screens that I was looking at a little while ago. Here's Supernus Pharmaceuticals coming out of the, trying to break out of this flag, but now it's at the highs of the range on a pocket pivot, so that's extended. But you can put these on your buy watch list and just see what happens. Winnebago. I fantasize about buying a Winnebago and outfitting it as a mobile trading station, complete with high-speed satellite internet, but we'll see if I ever get there. I could just see myself at 80 years old traveling the country trading in that. But anyways, you'll notice I've been practicing my lines on this, and this one's a lot smoother, so I'm getting better at this. And we're right up into this area of overhead on this side, so we'll see if this holds up. But you can see it opened up here by the tick mark. There's a little tick mark right there. You see that? And then you come down, and then you turn back to the upside. That's a hard one to play, but if you're looking at the 620 chart on that, you would have been able to pick it off this way, because let's see what happened here. We came down. Okay. Yeah, you came down. Here's where you pulled out. Right here. Boom. That might have been tough, because you don't really, you jump right back up to 46 from a low of 43 right after the open. And yeah, I guess you could have tried to play it, but that might have been tough. And then you don't really go anywhere for the rest of the day. So, but still Bible gap up. Let's see. Other things I'm keeping on are this Aqua. This is a thinner name though, so I'm not sure this is all that hot to trot. It might be. But it's hanging along here. It only trades about, I think, 400,000 or 500,000 shares a day. Let me check that. There's Etsy. Everybody remembers Etsy. I talked about that one when it was hanging down in here. You got to buy when it's quiet, right in here. Remember that? And drying up, volume drying up, and boom, there it goes. You get a big Bible gap up. It's kind of wedging higher, so I'm not so sure. Also in the 3D system space, you have Proto Labs or Proto Labs PRLB, and that stock has moved higher. It was Bible down in here along the 10-day and the 20-day. So a lot of these things have edged higher. IQ, someone had mentioned they don't remember me talking about it, but if you go back, I think, to the early April video reports when I was talking about these, this one, Billy, and Spot, these have all moved higher since then. Spot's been a little more jaggedy, but that was one I talked about back then. Anyways, there's a few things that look interesting, maybe even as shorts now, kind of failing up at the highs. I try to make a new high today in reverse. Volume picked up. Maybe that's a short up here. I don't know. Another one in the same realm, shall we say, cloud software, is Workday, and that one came in today after trying to get above the 50-day line. Here it is right here. And you reverse. So I don't know if this becomes a short using the 50-day line at 129.42 as your stop, and that's only about a 1% higher, so that's a possibility. And that one's been floundering a little bit. Salesforce has been doing well, but notice how it reversed off the highs today as well, and it's somewhat extended. So maybe this whole group comes in. Another one that I've been looking at and toying with on the short side, Splunk. You notice it did a similar thing here, trying to make a new high, and then it gaps down, then you rally back up to the 10-day line today. No real buying interest in the stock, and it reverses at the 10-day line. So, you know, is that a short here using the 10-day line at 116.97, about a percent higher as your stop? Possibly. I mean, all of these are going to depend on what the market does, and if we do pull in, and I don't know whether you pull in or not, but it looks like you could. Okay, so we'll see if what it looks like turns out to be what it actually ends up doing. But you know, the action was kind of weak in the Dow and also in the S&P, so seems a little sketchy. I mean, you're back up on the S&P, you're back up to these highs up here, and so you kind of stalled out today on really weak volume here at the 10-day line, and maybe it means you're going to roll back. So we'll see how this goes. But I think a lot of this also depends on what sort of rhetoric comes out. On the other hand, you know, that you could have this alibi selling situation, and for those of you who are not familiar with this, it's something Bill O'Neill told me that institutions will do. They will use a big news event, a big negative news event, like a trade tariff or whatever, and sell off the market really hard. Okay, and that gives them a chance to distribute stock. They just unload. And then when the news passes and becomes, say, lessened, or some, you know, cooing goes on between the U.S. and China, and that makes the market rally, then what they'll do is they'll come back in and hit the rally. So the selling is alibied by the news, but it's not really due to the news. The institutions and the big money wants to bail out of stocks, but they have a specific way of doing it, which is, as Bill O'Neill told me, alibied selling is one method, where you do sell on some news, and then when the news peters out, then everything lifts again, and then they sell into it again. So that's something to watch for. We've seen that happen before in the past when I've talked about it, and it's been different news items that have caused it. So that's something to keep an eye on. And we'll just see how things go over the next few days. But I mean, it's been a pretty wild rally in a lot of stuff, and things look really good. And when that happens, that's when my antenna go up, and I'm starting to look around to see if there's anything that might be shortable, or things that are extended that might come in hard, and where my buy points are on a pullback. And I would say at this point on a lot of names, my buy points on pullbacks are kind of down there in the pattern. So that's also telling me that we're pretty extended. Anyways, that's all I had, but I just wanted to throw this out. The written report should be up sometime soon. So we'll catch you guys later. Take care.